Abandoned homeless girl said, God, I want to have a parents. Millionaire saw her and Leela was just a small girl, no older than 10, yet she had already learned things most children never should. The city was loud and frightening, full of people who hurried past without looking at anyone but themselves. Cars honked, shop doors slammed, and the chatter of strangers filled every street. But Leela knew she had to be careful. She had learned early that in this world, nobody looked out for a little girl on the streets. She had been alone for as long as she could remember. Her parents were gone. She didn't know exactly where, only that they had left her. Sometimes she wondered if they would ever come back, but deep down she knew they probably wouldn't. Most nights, she found herself whispering a small prayer under her breath. God, I want to have parents, someone to love me, someone to care for me. Her days started with the hope of finding something to eat. The city streets were both a home and a battlefield. She knew where she could find leftover bread or sometimes scraps of food thrown away by careless people. She had learned to move quickly, to avoid the rougher boys who sometimes stole from her, and to hide when the police came, not because she had done anything wrong, but because being seen alone often caused trouble. Despite all this, Leela had a spark inside her. It was quiet, almost invisible, but it kept her going. She helped other children she met on the streets, sharing the little she had. If she found a piece of bread, she would break it in half for someone hungrier than herself. If she found a small coin, she would sometimes give it to a younger child too scared to beg. Even in the midst of her own suffering, she had learned to be kind. Nights were the hardest. The city's lights didn't warm her, and the noise never truly stopped. She would curl up in dark corners, her thin coat doing little to stop the cold wind from cutting through her. She had a small notebook, old and torn, where she wrote tiny notes to God. Sometimes it was just her dreams, a warm bed, a school to go to, food that didn't disappear by morning. Other times she wrote about her fears, the loneliness, the hunger, the harsh faces of adults who didn't care. Writing made her feel a little safer, as if someone out there was listening. Leela often found comfort in small things others ignored. She would watch pigeons in the park and imagine they were her friends. She would listen to the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement, counting them like a game, pretending she was somewhere safe. She noticed the kindness in small gestures. A passerby who smiled, someone who dropped a coin by accident, a shopkeeper who left a little bread on the counter. These moments, though rare, were like treasures to her, reminders that not everyone in the world was cruel. Despite her hardships, Leela carried a strong sense of hope. She believed that life had something better waiting for her. Sometimes she would stand on a busy corner, watching families pass by, children laughing with their parents, and she imagined herself in their place. She imagined someone taking her hand, guiding her safely through the city, telling her everything would be all right. It was a painful dream, but it was also what kept her going. Her survival skills were impressive for someone so young. She had memorized every alley and shortcut, knew which shopkeepers might help, and even learned to avoid dangerous areas where she could get hurt. She scavenged carefully, always keeping an eye out for danger. But even with all her knowledge, fear was constant. Every loud noise, every sudden movement could make her heart race. She had to stay alert at all times because the streets were unpredictable. Leela's friends were few, but they mattered. There was an older boy named Marco who sometimes shared his food with her, though he was rough and guarded. There was a little girl, Anya, who reminded Leela of herself, shy, scared, but resilient. Together they formed a small family of sorts, surviving day by day, protecting each other in small ways. They laughed when they could, but the laughter was often short-lived, replaced quickly by the harsh reality of hunger or the need to hide from adults who might not understand. Even in the hardest moments, Leela found reasons to dream. She dreamed of a school where she could learn to read books and write stories bigger than the notebook she had now. She dreamed of a warm bed, a kitchen full of food, and someone who would say her name with love. At night, when the cold pressed against her, she would imagine herself wrapped in blankets, with a family around her, listening to stories and feeling safe. One evening, after a particularly cold day, she huddled in a doorway, shivering and exhausted. She whispered her prayer again, her tiny voice almost lost in the city noise. God, I just want parents, please, someone to love me. She didn't know if anyone was listening, but saying it out loud made her feel a little stronger, a little braver. Even in despair, Leela had a secret strength. She had faced hunger, fear, and loneliness every day, yet she refused to give up. Her eyes, though tired, sparkled with determination. Her mind, though young, had learned lessons most adults never faced. And her heart, though small, had space for hope, love, and kindness, even when life had been cruel. As the night grew colder and the city lights flickered, Leela closed her eyes and imagined a better life. She imagined a warm home, laughter, food on the table, and people who cared. She imagined a future where she didn't have to worry about where her next meal would come from or who would hurt her. And somewhere deep inside, she believed that one day her prayers might be answered. Little did Leela know that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. One rainy afternoon, a stranger would notice her, and a moment of kindness would set her on a path that could turn her dreams into reality. But for now, she waited, alone yet hopeful in the cold streets, holding on to the small light of hope inside her heart. The next day, Leela woke before sunrise, as she always did. The streets were still quiet, the early morning mist hanging low over the pavement. She wrapped her thin coat tightly around herself, hoping it would keep out the cold. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she had learned to ignore it for a while. Today, like every day, she would need to be alert, careful, and quick. As she walked through the narrow streets, Leela noticed the same faces she had learned to recognize. The street vendors, the old man who fed stray cats, the cleaners sweeping the sidewalks. Most of them paid no attention to her. Some gave her a quick glance, and she had learned that these looks often carried judgment, annoyance, or fear. She kept her head low, moving quickly, but still with her eyes open, always scanning for both danger and opportunity. It was mid-morning when she approached the corner near the small cafe, one of her favorite spots. Not because they gave her food, but because it was warm and smelled of coffee and baked goods. The aroma reminded her of a life she had never known, a life where homes were filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of food that didn't disappear too quickly. She settled in a doorway across the street, peeking occasionally at the busy sidewalk, hoping for some kindness from a passerby. Then she saw him, a tall man dressed in a sharp suit, his hair neatly combed and his presence commanding attention. Leela had seen people like him before, wealthy people with expensive cars who walked fast, barely noticing the world around them. But something was different. The man slowed as he walked past her, then stopped. His eyes, a deep shade of brown, lingered on her not with judgment but with curiosity and concern. For a moment, Leela froze. She wasn't used to anyone looking at her with kindness. Most adults either ignored her or shooed her away. But this man looked at her like she mattered. He knelt down to her level, a gentle smile on his face. "Are you all right, little one?" he asked softly. His voice was calm, warm, and somehow comforting. Leela hesitated. Trust didn't come easily to her. She had been betrayed, ignored, and abandoned too many times to believe that anyone genuinely cared. Yet something about this man made her heart beat a little faster. She nodded quietly, unsure what else to do. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked. Leela's stomach growled, betraying her nervousness. She nodded again. Without another word, the man turned and entered the cafe, returning moments later with a warm meal wrapped carefully in a paper bag. He handed it to her. "Here, eat, take your time." For the first time in a long while, Leela felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the food. She took the bag in trembling hands, the aroma making her eyes widen. Slowly, she opened it, revealing bread, cheese, fruit, and a small cup of hot chocolate. Her hands shook as she took the first bite, savoring every flavor. She had not tasted a meal like this in years. The man sat on the curb beside her, careful not to crowd her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Leela," she whispered, almost afraid to speak. "Leela," he repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue. "That's a beautiful name." She looked at him, confused. No one had ever called her name beautiful before. Most people had ignored her, or worse, had used it to scold or shame her. His words made her heart swell with a strange mix of fear and hope. "Where are your parents, Leela?" he asked gently. Her throat tightened. She had told this story to strangers before, and it never ended well. Sometimes adults didn't believe her. Sometimes they blamed her. But something in this man's eyes was different. She took a deep breath and whispered, They aren't here, they left me." The man's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, Leela, that's very hard." She nodded, tears threatening to fall, but she swallowed them. She wasn't used to crying in front of anyone. Vulnerability had always been dangerous. Yet, sitting there with this stranger, a strange sense of safety washed over her. They talked quietly as she ate. the man asking gentle questions about her life, her dreams, and the things that scared her. She told him about her notebook, the prayers she wrote every night, and the small joys she found in helping other children on the street. She didn't hold back, not entirely, because for the first time, someone seemed to genuinely listen. The man, whose name she learned was Adrian Cole, didn't just listen, he believed her. He didn't offer empty promises or pity. Instead, he asked questions, learned about her intelligence, her kindness, and her determination. Adrian had met many people in his life, but he had never met a child like Leela. There was something in her spirit that refused to be broken, even under the harshest circumstances. After the meal, Adrian offered to walk her to a nearby shelter. Leela hesitated. She had been to shelters before, and they were not always kind places. But Adrian's presence was calming, and she found herself nodding. As they walked, she noticed that he didn't treat her like a charity case. He treated her like a person, like someone with worth and potential. At the shelter, Leela was given a bed, a warm blanket, and clean clothes, but Adrian didn't leave her there. Instead, he spent hours talking to the shelter staff, learning about her situation and asking questions about her future. He wanted to know what she liked, what she dreamed about, and how he could help her. Over the next few days, Adrian continued to visit Leela. He brought books for her to read, small gifts that made her smile, and most importantly, attention and care. He asked her about school, about art, about music, things she had never been able to explore before. For the first time, Leela felt that someone truly cared about her life, her growth, and her happiness. She began to trust him slowly. Trust wasn't easy, it never had been. But Adrian was patient. He didn't rush her, didn't demand anything. He simply showed her kindness, consistency, and respect. And with each day, Leela began to imagine a life beyond the streets, a life where she didn't have to fear hunger, cold, or loneliness. One rainy afternoon, as they sat under a small awning outside the shelter, Leela whispered her prayer again, almost as if testing it. "God, please, I want parents, someone to love me." She didn't expect an answer, not really. But she looked at Adrian and saw a man who seemed to believe her, who seemed to care, and for the first time her heart felt a flicker of hope. Adrian smiled at her, noticing her quiet hope. "Leela, you are special. You are brave, kind, and strong. And I promise you don't have to face the world alone anymore." Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be real? Could someone actually care about her as much as she dreamed? She wanted to ask, but words failed her. Instead, she nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she had never known. In the following weeks, Adrian took small steps to help Leela adjust to a life beyond the streets. He enrolled her in a school where she could learn properly, hired tutors to help her catch up on missed lessons, and even introduced her to music and art classes. Leela was nervous at first, feeling out of place among children who had never experienced hunger or fear. But Adrian stayed by her side, encouraging her, praising her efforts, and showing her that she was capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. Slowly, Leela's confidence grew. She began to participate in class, make friends, and explore talents she didn't know she had. She discovered a love for painting, drawing the streets she once knew with colors that reflected both her struggles and her dreams. She wrote stories in her notebook about hope, kindness, and the people who had touched her life. Each day, she felt herself becoming a new person, not someone who was lost and abandoned, but someone with potential, someone who mattered. Through it all, Adrian never pressured her. He didn't force her to forget her past or pretend it never happened. Instead, he helped her understand that her experiences made her unique, strong, and capable of inspiring others. Leela began to see that life could be different, and more importantly, that she deserved the love, care, and safety she had always dreamed of. By the end of the first month, Leela no longer saw the streets as her home. They were a memory, a reminder of how far she had come. And every night, as she curled up in a warm bed for the first time in her life, she whispered her prayers with a heart full of hope. "Thank you, God, and thank you, Adrian." Little did she know this was only the beginning. The path ahead would bring new challenges, but also opportunities, love, and the chance to truly find the family she had always longed for. And with Adrian by her side, Leela finally began to believe that her dreams might not be just dreams. They could become reality. Life began to change for Leela in ways she had never imagined. The streets, which had once been her home, now felt like a distant memory. She had a bed to sleep in, a roof over her head, and food that never ran out before morning. But with these comforts came new challenges. The world beyond the streets was different, and Leela had to learn to navigate it. Adrian had enrolled her in a private school, one filled with children who came from families very different from hers. At first, Leela felt out of place. Her clothes were old and plain compared to the colorful outfits of other children. Her way of speaking, shaped by years surviving on the streets, sounded different. Sometimes she didn't know how to join in conversations or make friends. She wanted to fit in, but fitting in felt impossible. The first few days at school were the hardest. Leela would sit quietly in class, watching other children laugh and share stories about their families. She missed her old friends on the streets, even though life there had been harsh. She remembered Marco, Anya, and the small acts of kindness that had kept her alive. She wondered if they were safe, if they had someone to look after them. But then she would glance at Adrian's kind eyes, and a spark of courage would remind her that she had been given a second chance. Adrian visited her often, encouraging her to keep going. He praised her efforts, celebrated her small victories, and reassured her that she could learn and grow just like the other children. Slowly, Leela began to adjust. She learned to read and write more fluently, discovered a love for mathematics, and found joy in learning things she had never known before. One of Leela's favorite subjects was art. She loved to paint and draw, expressing the world as she saw it. At first, her drawings were dark, reflecting her struggles and the cold streets. But as weeks passed, the colors in her paintings became brighter. She painted flowers she had never seen in real life, imagined homes filled with warmth, and drew portraits of people who showed her kindness. Through art, she could express feelings that words could not. Music also became a source of comfort. Leela had never played an instrument before, but Adrian arranged lessons for her. The first time she touched the piano keys, she felt a strange connection, as if the music understood her. Each note was a step away from the pain of the past, a step toward the life she was learning to embrace. Slowly, she began to play simple melodies, each one filled with hope and joy. Making friends was another challenge. Many children at school didn't understand her background. They had grown up with families who provided everything, and they could not relate to the life she had known. Some were curious, others cautious. Leela felt nervous approaching them, unsure if they would accept her. But her kindness and honesty gradually won them over. She shared small stories about the things she had learned on the streets, not to boast, but to show that even difficult experiences could teach strength and resilience. One day, a girl named Emma approached her. "I like your drawing," Emma said softly, pointing at a sketch Leela had done of a colorful garden. Leela felt her cheeks warm. No one had complimented her work like that before. "Thank you," she whispered. That small exchange marked the beginning of a friendship that would help Leela feel more connected to her new world. Even with school and new friends, the transition was not easy. Leela sometimes felt lonely, missing the familiarity of the streets and the small sense of freedom it had given her. There were days when she cried quietly in her room, feeling overwhelmed by all the changes. But Adrian was always there, gently reminding her that adjusting to a new life takes time, and that it was okay to feel sad or scared. Adrian also introduced Leela to reading books beyond school lessons. She discovered stories of courage, adventure, and kindness. Each story inspired her, showing her that the world was full of possibilities, and that people could be good even in difficult times. She began to dream bigger, imagining a life not just of safety, but of purpose. She wanted to help other children like herself, children who were lost, hungry, or alone. One evening, as Leela practiced piano in the living room, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. Adrian watched from the doorway, smiling quietly. "You've come so far, Leela," he said. "I'm proud of you." Leela paused, her small hands still on the keys. "I never thought life could be like this," she admitted. "I thought the streets would always be my home." Adrian knelt beside her and gently took her hand. "Your past made you strong, Leela, but your future is yours to shape, and you deserve every bit of happiness coming to you." Over time, Leela began to see herself differently. She no longer felt like a helpless child abandoned by the world. She was someone with talents, dreams, and a place where she belonged. She continued to write in her notebook, but now her entries were filled with hope as well as memories. She wrote about the kindness of strangers, the beauty of learning, and the joy of discovering her own strengths. Leela also began to help others. At school, she would assist younger students struggling with lessons, offering patience and understanding. She volunteered at the shelter where she had stayed briefly, sharing her experiences and encouraging other children to hold on to hope. Her empathy, shaped by her own hardships, made her a source of comfort and inspiration. Adrian watched with pride as Leela grew. He saw not just a child adapting to a new life, but a young girl blossoming into someone capable of great kindness and determination. He knew that her journey was far from over, that challenges would still come, but he also knew that Leela had the strength and heart to face them. One rainy afternoon, as Leela walked home from school, she noticed children playing in puddles, laughing and shouting. She remembered how she had once watched them from a distance, wishing she could join. Now she ran through the puddles with her new friends, laughing freely, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. The streets that had once been a place of fear were now a backdrop to her growth, a reminder of how far she had come. Despite the joy and progress, Leela never forgot her past. She remembered the nights of hunger, the cold winds, the loneliness, and the prayers whispered into the dark. These memories were not just painful, they were a source of strength. They reminded her of resilience, courage, and the value of kindness. Every act of generosity she had received, every smile, every warm meal became a lesson in the importance of helping others. Through art, music, friendship, and learning, Leela slowly built a new identity. She was no longer just the homeless girl who prayed for parents. She was a student, an artist, a musician, and a friend. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories, and with each victory her confidence grew. Adrian continued to guide her, but he also encouraged independence. He wanted Leela to understand that she could make choices, pursue dreams, and shape her own future. Together, they discussed ideas for her education, hobbies, and even ways she could help other children in need. Leela's imagination and determination impressed Adrian, and he realized that her potential was limitless. By the end of the school year, Leela had made significant progress. She had friends, she excelled in her studies, and her artistic talents were recognized by teachers and classmates alike. But most importantly, she had found hope, a hope that was stronger than fear, loneliness, or past hardships. She had discovered that life could be kind, and that love and care could come in unexpected ways. And though she still sometimes whispered her prayers at night, they were no longer only requests. They had become expressions of gratitude. Thank you, God. Thank you for Adrian. Thank you for giving me a chance. Leela's journey was far from over, but she had taken the most important step. She had opened her heart to trust, hope, and the possibility of a future filled with love and opportunity. Time passed, and Leela's life continued to transform in ways she had never imagined possible. From the cold, lonely streets she had once called home, she had moved into a world of warmth, love, and opportunity. Yet, even with all the comforts, she remained humble and grateful, remembering every moment of hardship that had shaped her. She had learned that life could change in an instant, and she was determined to make the most of her second chance. Adrian had become more than just a mentor or a benefactor to her. Over time, he had become a father figure, someone she could rely on, trust, and confide in. Leela had always longed for parents, and though the streets had taught her to be cautious of adults, Adrian had shown her that some people could care unconditionally. Every morning, she would wake up feeling safe, a feeling she had never truly known before. School remained a central part of her life, and Leela excelled in her studies. Her teachers were amazed at her dedication, intelligence, and creativity. What once had been a struggle to even attend school now became a place of growth and accomplishment. Leela discovered a love for science and literature, devouring books and experiments with a passion. Her curiosity seemed endless, and she often asked Adrian questions late into the evenings, wanting to understand the world around her. But Leela's growth was not just academic. She had also learned the importance of kindness, empathy, and giving back. She remembered her time on the streets, the cold nights, the hunger, the moments of fear, and she knew that she wanted to help other children who were in the same position she had once been. With Adrian's guidance, she began volunteering at shelters, sharing her story and encouraging children to hold on to hope. She spoke to them not with pity, but with understanding, showing them that life could change, sometimes in ways they could never imagine. Her artistic talents continued to flourish as well. Leela's paintings, once filled with dark and lonely themes, now radiated light and color. She painted images of families, gardens, laughter, and hope. Her work gained attention at school exhibitions, and her teachers encouraged her to pursue art further. Music remained a source of comfort, with Leela composing small pieces on the piano that told the stories of her life, the hardships, the dreams, and the triumphs. Every note carried emotion, a reminder of the journey she had traveled. As Leela grew older, Adrian formally adopted her. The day of the adoption was filled with tears, laughter, and overwhelming joy. For the first time in her life, she had parents who loved her, protected her, and believed in her unconditionally. Adrian smiled as he held her hand in the courtroom, proud of the brave, kind, and resilient young woman she had become. Leela felt an immense sense of belonging, knowing that she was truly part of a family. Even with all these blessings, Leela never forgot her past. She kept her notebook close, filling its pages with memories, lessons, and gratitude. She often wrote about the streets, the children she had met, and the moments of kindness that had guided her along the way. Writing became a way to preserve her journey and to share it with others, inspiring hope and courage in those who read her words. One afternoon, Leela visited the city streets she had once called home. She walked slowly, remembering every alley, every corner, and every night she had spent shivering and hungry. But this time, she was not afraid. She carried a small bag of food and warm clothes, determined to help children still struggling in the streets. When she found a group of kids huddled together in the cold, she approached them gently, offering her hand and a kind smile. "Here," she said softly, "take this. You deserve to be safe and warm." The children looked at her in surprise. Some were wary, some curious, but all were touched by her kindness. Leela sat with them, sharing stories of hope and encouragement. She spoke about her life, about how even when things seem impossible, change is always possible. She reminded them that there are people who care, and that their dreams and wishes were valid. For many of these children, Leela was a symbol of hope, a living proof that life could get better, even from the darkest circumstances. Adrian watched from a distance, proud and moved. He saw the impact Leela had on these children, and he realized that her experiences had given her a rare and powerful empathy. She understood suffering because she had lived it, and she used that understanding to bring light to others. It was a cycle of kindness, one that he knew would continue for years to come. Over time, Leela's story began to spread. Teachers, friends, and community members were inspired by her resilience and determination. She was invited to speak at schools, community events, and local gatherings, sharing her journey with anyone willing to listen. Her words were simple but powerful, filled with honesty, hope, and encouragement. She emphasized that life may be difficult, but perseverance, kindness, and belief in oneself could overcome almost any obstacle. Leela also began a small foundation to help homeless children. With Adrian's support, she created programs that provided shelter, food, education, and emotional support. Her goal was not just to give temporary relief, but to provide children with tools, resources, and guidance to build better futures. She wanted every child to know that they were worthy of love, care, and opportunity. Her relationship with Adrian continued to grow. He was not just a parent, but a friend, a guide, and a source of unwavering support. He celebrated her successes, comforted her during difficult times, and encouraged her to dream bigger than she ever had before. Leela felt fortunate every day, not just for the material comforts, but for the love and stability she had longed for her entire childhood. Despite all her accomplishments, Leela remained humble and grounded. She never let success make her forget where she came from. Her experiences on the streets had taught her lessons no school could teach: resilience, empathy, courage, and the value of hope. She carried these lessons with her into every new challenge, every new opportunity, and every life she touched. Years later, Leela graduated from high school with honors, her artistic and academic talents recognized by teachers, peers, and the community. She had friends who supported her, mentors who guided her, and a family who loved her unconditionally. But more importantly, she had learned to love herself, to believe in her worth, and to embrace the future with hope and determination. Looking back on her journey, Leela often reflected on the day Adrian first noticed her in the alleyway, hungry, cold, and alone. She realized how a single act of kindness had changed the course of her life. She had prayed for parents, and in the most unexpected way, her prayers were answered. But she also knew that it was her courage, resilience, and determination that allowed her to embrace the opportunities she was given. Leela's story became an inspiration to many, a reminder that hope can exist even in the darkest times, and that one person's kindness can transform a life forever. She continued to use her talents, her voice, and her resources to bring hope to children who, like her, had once been lost and abandoned. She showed them that they were never truly alone, that dreams could come true, and that love could heal even the deepest wounds. And every night, as Leela lay in her warm bed, she whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for the children still searching for hope. "Thank you, God," she would say softly. "Thank you for the family I have, the love I know, and the chance to help others. Please watch over those who need kindness and guide them to safety and happiness." Through her journey, Leela learned a powerful truth. Life is not defined by where you start, but by how you respond to the challenges you face, the hope you hold, and the kindness you share. From an abandoned girl on the streets to a young woman inspiring change, Leela's story was proof that miracles are possible, even in the most ordinary moments, and that love and perseverance can create a future brighter than anyone could imagine.